What's up everyone, how you doing? So, I am Adam and today I've got with me Darren. I'm Adam from MrThaiBox123 or aka MrThaiBox123 from YouTube. And then we've got Darren, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey guys, I'm Darren, I'm from YourGadgetGuide.net and on YouTube it's youtube.com/YourGadgetGuideUK.
Cool, so basically this is going to be our very first podcast. As a lot of you will know, because I'm going to be putting this on my YouTube channel as well, we are kind of more well known for our YouTube technical review videos. We review all kinds of gadgets, laptops, phones, pretty much anything in the kind of tech arena. But we've decided to break out into the podcast world. So a big hello to anyone who is not aware of our YouTube videos, who's just on the podcast application itself. And we're going to go through a whole different variation of news subjects today. We've got loads and loads of stuff to cover, so let's get straight into it and start off with the most recent piece of news, which really came around yesterday, and that was the GM release of Mountain Lion. So this is the new iteration of Mac OS X from Apple. Now at the moment it's only available to anyone who's got a developer account, but sometime towards the end of this month. Any idea what kind of date we're going to get the final release?
Rumours indicate towards the 27th of July, but that's only rumours. I mean, the quicker the better, obviously. I mean, it's priced really well. I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, you've got the GM version of it right now, but I'm going to say about 27th of July. That's what I'm predicting.
Yeah, so hopefully 27th of July we're going to get it. Now Apple really have, I think, hit a sweet spot in terms of the pricing for this. I think in the US it's $19.99 and in the UK, do you know what it's going to be here?
If I remember rightly, wasn't it £20.99p?
No, I don't even think it's that much. I actually think it's going to be about £12.99 in the UK. I think it's around that kind of price point.
Even better.
And I think that's the reason, you know, we heard from Microsoft earlier in the week as well, kind of breaking out from this a little bit, that they were going to be announcing the fact that they were going to allow upgrades to the latest Windows 8 Professional, so not even the home or student version, for I think it was $40, which is a huge reduction in price in terms of Microsoft operating systems. I mean, normally over here, I think you go into kind of PC World or Currys and you pick it up for, I'm not sure, sort of 80, 100, 120 pounds. I think Professional even maybe slightly more than that. So that's a huge discount there from Microsoft trying to push everyone to Windows 8. And I think some of the reason for that is just the fact that Apple are just releasing these operating systems at such a budget price. They just make it so affordable for everyone to kind of jump onto the latest version. Now there is a little bit of a kind of caveat to that in the fact that the operating systems for Apple literally come out every single year, whereas obviously the ones from Microsoft come out every 3 or 4 years. So your £100 of Microsoft is not necessarily that much more than paying Apple £20-30 a year. But you know, when you look at it as a one-off cost per year, I think that $20 mark is definitely a great price point. I don't know what your thoughts are on the pricing.
I think it's a magnificent price point. I mean, Microsoft definitely have got to compete with Apple in the operating system prices. As we all know, in business, when companies compete, the consumer always wins. So obviously, as they compete, the prices are going to go down, which means we get pretty much a cheaper upgrade every single year. I like the way that Apple do it as well. I think it keeps things fresh. I mean, you look at the features they're introducing into iOS 6, and then you look at what they've introduced into Mountain Lion. They're definitely pulling them together. They've got some great features that I'm looking forward to, and at that price, you know, I don't think they could have nailed it any more than they have done.
Yeah, I mean, so as I was talking to you about earlier, I've downloaded the GM release from the developer website. I am a registered developer, so we get the free access to that fairly soon on, and I've downloaded the GM release, which is pretty much the Golden Master, so that's going to be pretty much what we're going to see in the retail release, and it's worked flawlessly on the Mac Pro, the MacBook Air, and on the MacBook Pro as well. So really enjoying some of the new features. I think one of my favourite new features that I only kind of found out about yesterday was the dictation. And with the dictation, you basically, I've set it up to use the command key, and basically you press the command key twice quite quickly, and then it starts dictating. and it really does work fantastically well. Obviously, for those of you that have used Siri and tried the dictation on that, you'll know how kind of accurate that is, and they really have continued that on into OS 10 Mountain Lion as well. And the dictation just works fantastically well, and it's not tied down to a specific application. So even as we tried earlier, I just sent you a test tweet, and you just literally go into your edit box on the send tweet, double press the command button, and then literally say what you want to say, and it got it pretty much bang on, other than the odd sort of grammatical error. So very, very impressed with the dictation. Have you played around with the dictation on Siri at all?
I use Siri all the time. It's more of this is something I'm going to show my friends. It's not something that I use personally. I wouldn't send a text message simply because, doing this, you have to send a lot of personal text messages, which involves reading out and saying some personal information. However, I do think that bringing dictation to Mountain Lion, especially for people like me and you that write a lot of articles, it could actually be beneficial depending on how accurate it is. I mean, if it's very accurate, then who knows, I'm probably going to give this thing a go at writing a complete article just by speaking exactly what I think. So if it does work as advertised and it continues to be as accurate as it was when you was testing it with that tweet, I think it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to using it. If it's definitely as accurate as Siri, then I'm all for it. But it is frustrating when companies do release these dictation applications and then they're not very accurate at all. But if Apple do get as accurate as it is currently and they continue to improve it, I'm all for it. I like dictation. I think it saves a lot of time and saves my fingers from aching from doing something else.
Yeah, I mean, like you, I've never really found an actual sort of day-to-day use for Siri, and I don't even use the dictation on my phone too much either, unless maybe I'm driving and I've got the Bluetooth and you just press the button and do the dictate like that and send a text. But I think when you've got it actually on your home operating system and you're going to write some long email or a long document or an article, like you say, I think it's going to be a lot more usable on Mountain Lion than it would be on your iOS device, most definitely. And in fact, probably more usable on the iPad as well. And when we see that coming into iOS 6 on the iPad, I think it will be a lot more used on the iPad and on the actual OS 10 operating system, just because they're more productivity sort of based devices rather than the phone, which is really kind of just a consumer thing where you're kind of just taking in information rather than actually sort of producing anything. But yeah, that was one of the first features that I didn't know about, that I've tried, that I really, really enjoyed, and I thought they've done a fantastic job of that as well. And the best thing about it was that it didn't require the developer of your applications to tap into their API, so it works with any app right off the word go, and you can just use that straight away. So definitely very impressed with that. Now obviously one of the big things in Mountain Lion is the notification center. Now I don't know about you, but when they started initially in Lion bringing over some of the features from iOS, like Launchpad, I absolutely can't stand Launchpad. I really do not see the point of that in any way whatsoever, when you can either use like Spotlight or the applications kind of menu, or obviously your dock. But with notifications, that really is a fantastic thing that they've brought over, and you've got these consolidated notifications. They come over on the screen exactly the same as they do on iOS as a banner, and then they appear in the notification center as well if you've kind of missed them. So absolutely fantastic, the notifications that we've got from iOS brought over to Mountain Lion as well.
I prefer the notifications actually in the sidebar. I'm sort of like an OCD freak. So when you do miss a notification, you get the little one that appears above the icon in the dock. I don't like that. So I really do like the fact that it's all going to be into this sidebar, which obviously will be, you can push it away, you can bring it in. It's just not there because I do actually get irritated by that little one that appears. Also, speaking about that Launchpad, that was before Mountain Lion. That's something that really indicated how they were going to tie iOS and the operating system that they use for the desktop computers and the laptops together. I think they're doing it really well. I don't know whether I'll use Notification Center on the desktop as much as I do on the iPhone, but it's something that, I'll have to judge for that once I actually get to use it myself. As of now, I'm not sure whether I'm going to use it after about a month of having Mountain Lion. I think the novelty might die down slightly. Do you think you'll use it in a month's time?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, you know, because you've got like the notifications for iMessage, which we'll come on to in a second, which is now obviously built into Mountain Lion as well. Things like that. I mean, rather than having the little sort of banner on the icon, like you say, it's definitely a lot nicer that they kind of flow in. And if you don't take any notice of them, then you can go back to the notification center afterwards and then kind of deal with them at a later stage. So yeah, definitely a big plus side for me, and not just a fad like the Launchpad was on OS 10 Lion. With this, I think that everyone will use it. The only kind of downside to it is that this does require the application developer to tap into the API. So as you get Mountain Lion out of the box, if you're using Outlook like I do instead of Mail, or you're using any kind of third-party applications, they're not going to have that notification support built in. So for a while you're going to be relying on, you know, Growl or the old application notification until those people get that tied in. But initially you do get the Twitter integration, you also get the integration from Mail, and you also, like I say, get the integration from iMessage as well. So that is definitely looking pretty good. And in fact, the only downside that I can see, like I say, comes when you start talking about the actual applications using the API. So, for example, when you get a tweet and it comes in like a mention or a message and it gives you a notification, when you click on that notification, it opens up Twitter inside the web browser, which I don't like using. So until, you know, the Twitter apps get the support into the notification center, then that's not too great, that particular side of it. But when you're using it for Mail and also for iMessage, it's absolutely fantastic. Obviously, also all your calendar events appear in there as well, so that's kind of cool as well that they've got that in there straight away. But like I say, as more of the developers tap into it, as they do with things like iCloud and all the other APIs that are available, then we're going to see, you know, much more sort of desirable uses for the notification center. But yeah, I think you'll like it. I've definitely been really pleased with it. Especially if you're using a trackpad and you can use the 2-finger swipe to just quickly get access to the notification center. That makes it really nice, gives it a definite sweet spot in terms of kind of usability. With the Magic Mouse, you can't use any kind of gesture to get to it, so you've actually got to go up and click the thing, so not quite as usable on that side in terms of getting access to it, but still definitely a very usable thing. I think everyone's going to get to use it and enjoy it and make it part of their kind of day-to-day usage, definitely.
I'm like you on that API thing. I think it's a bit silly how they've totally left it out of this, but they've put it into the dictation side of thing. I think I'd enjoy it a lot more if right out of the box everything would work with it, rather than having to wait for these developers. And let's be honest, we're not guaranteed that the developers are going to actually add their API into this and actually make use of this, what could be a really handy little feature of the latest operating system. I'd have much preferred it if they'd have gone the same way as dictation, right out of the box, everything would work with it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, with the dictation, it was very easy for them to do that because there's no real tie-in. It's just a question of kind of entering text. But with the notifications, obviously, they've got to tie into that API. I mean, if you look at Growl before, then, you know, it was a little bit easier, even if this application didn't support Growl, to be able to integrate it one way or another. But with this, yeah, it definitely does need to tap into the API. And much the same as when they brought the new notifications onto iOS 5, we had to wait for all the developers to, you know, write the new notifications. But now, when you go to the the settings, the notifications area on the settings for iOS, and you look at all the people that have got notifications now, they've tapped into that pretty quickly. So let's hope they do the same thing with Mountain Lion, although I don't think that developers have quite the same sort of, I don't know, sharpness in terms of getting things changed on OS 10 as they do on iOS. But we'll have to wait and see what the take-up is. Hopefully it'll be, you know, as soon as possible, at least, especially with things like Office anyway, that because I know a lot of people use Outlook over the inbuilt Mail app.
Well, you do, don't you? I mean, I prefer, I'm obviously in a little bit of a better position with that. I prefer Apple's Mail client, so obviously that will be tied in. So, you know, I'll get that added feature of being able to see the mail and all of my, you know, feeds right within that notification center. It is just a matter of time. Speaking of, the developers being a little bit slower on the Macintosh applications, I agree with that. But then again, you've got to look at, where is the revenue coming from at the minute? Mobile applications are going through the roof right now. You see these small applications, like I think Instagram, which was bought out for like $1 billion. It's got like 6 people working on that thing. The money at the minute is being made in the mobile applications. It's only a matter of time though before I think we start to see, the desktop applications really become part of the application industry. But as of now, I think the developers are definitely focusing on the mobile side of things, which is why it was really quick to, for the developers to jump aboard this notification center within iOS. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of time, and then we'll start to see the same appear in the desktop version.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, they definitely have got more of a focus on that. But, the increase of Macs is definitely getting more and more. I mean, I work in IT, so all of the kind of back-end infrastructure and all of the desktops are all Windows-based machines, both servers and client operating systems. And historically, you never really saw Macs. When I used to get a Mac out at a meeting, people would be like, why are you using that? But now people are like, oh, wow, cool, you've got a Mac. And you're seeing more and more people have their own personal Apple, Mac machines rather than using PCs. So there's definitely an increase in that. And we've seen Apple's market share in terms of end user devices, not in terms of mobile devices, but in terms of laptops and desktops go up significantly. I think they come close to about 10% now of the overall market share. And I think if you probably went back 6 or 7 years, you'd probably be looking at less than 1%. So don't know how accurate those figures are, but I believe it's somewhere along those lines. So we're definitely going to see more Macs. The Mac App Store has made it a lot easier for people to get their apps out there. It's introduced a lot more money into the application developers as well for Mac. So hopefully, like you say, we'll get some more focus on the Mac apps as we move forward. But the next one I wanted to talk about on Mountain Lion, another one of the big features, was iMessage. Now, you probably know this, but a few months ago when they announced Mountain Lion, they did bring out a beta version of iMessage for Mac OS X Lion, and now we've got obviously the full version inside Mountain Lion. Did you go ahead and try that beta out, and what did you think about it?
I did, and to be honest, for a beta, you wouldn't have been able to tell directly looking at it that it was a beta. It worked really well. I found it a little bit annoying that sometimes the messages would be slightly delayed. For example, I'd get the message on my phone, and 5 or 6 minutes later, I'd get it on the computer. But then again, I wasn't going to complain or judge it too much on that, simply because it's a beta. Do I think it's handy? Yeah, I mean, the amount of times that I did actually use it was quite shocking to myself. I didn't expect me to use it. I thought, okay, it's going to be nice. I'll use it if, my phone's deep down in my pocket and I can't be bothered to get it out. But I actually, even though my phone was next to me, I opted to send the message via my computer. I really am a big fan of that. If they could actually find a way to integrate my phone details on there as well, maybe even turn this into an application where, for example, I could send a text message via that. I know it's only iMessage at the minute, but I'd actually like the ability to send a text message directly from my computer, and iMessage kind of brings 50% of that to life. So, I'm looking forward to seeing how iMessage develops, and for a beta version that I tested so far, I'm looking forward to it, and I really do have high hopes for iMessage.
Yeah, I mean, in Mountain Lion, they've definitely improved on the beta. It's a lot better now. It's almost a kind of mini social network almost. You can send pictures and you can do all kinds of stuff with it, and it's definitely improved a huge amount in terms of reliability over the beta. And like you say, if I can send an iMessage on my computer, even if I've got my phone sitting next to me, it's definitely a million times faster to just type it out. The only downside to that is the fact that obviously you can only send it to other people who have got iMessage. Now you can actually send iMessage to phone numbers if they've got iMessage instead of using an email address. But obviously if people want to iMessage your computer, then they've got to iMessage the email address that's associated to it. So if they're actually just sending an iMessage to your phone number, then that's only going to come up on your phone and not on your Mac. So that's a bit annoying. So what I've done is on my phone, I've made the default sending address my email address, hoping that people will save that rather than, or in addition to my phone number. And then when they send me messages, hopefully everything will start coming through to both. But it is a bit of a shame that you can't have text messages as well. I'd absolutely love to be able to make and receive phone calls via my actual iPhone phone number, as well as all of the text messages as well. Even if they added some kind of carrier fee to it, I would still go ahead and do it, because it's just so much faster to just, you know, you're sitting there working at your computer, you get a message, bang, you just reply to it. You don't have to get your phone out, swipe it, unlock it, start writing in a slower way. So yeah, there's a couple of kind of downsides to it, and obviously Apple aren't going to be particularly sort of fast in moving forward in opening it up to anyone else either. So we know it's only ever going to be an Apple thing, as that is the Apple way. So that's a bit of a downside. And also with Samsung, I don't know if you've noticed, but Samsung's chat on application that you get included with the Galaxy S3, for example, is now available throughout the Android Google Play Store, and it's also available now on iOS as well. So that is actually a kind of cross-platform messaging system that's completely free of charge. So I'm not quite sure whether it will sort of fall by the wayside if Apple don't pick up on opening it up to other devices. But then again, they don't open anything up to anyone, and they've made a pretty successful business out of it. So I don't think we're going to see anything like that pretty soon. But yeah, I mean, definitely check out the chat on application. That's pretty cool there from Samsung.
I haven't checked that out. I mean, I do like iMessage. I know it is limited to iOS devices. There was rumours that Android would be taking on BBM and, you know, having BlackBerry Messenger on Android as well. Now, if they did do that, do you think that would force Apple to, you know, think, right lads, you know, these guys have gone cross-media. We're going to have to open up iMessage and maybe make a Windows application for it. Would you know, Android becoming successful in a similar department force Apple to open up? I
don't think so, because we've already got WhatsApp, and that's available on most mobile devices. You can get that on BlackBerry, Android, and also obviously iOS. The only thing with that is that they don't have a PC or a Mac version. What we really need is a consolidated messaging application that is for PC, Mac, iOS, Android, BlackBerry, all of the different, and obviously the Microsoft Windows Phone as well. If someone could actually create something that was completely cross-platform and completely synchronized between all of the different platforms, then I think they would be onto a winner. But I think if BlackBerry were ever going to open up BBM to the outside world, I think they've missed the boat on that one. I think we're going to see something else better than that before they even consider doing it. So yeah, I don't think we're going to see anything like that from any of the providers anytime soon. But it would be nice if WhatsApp, for example, made a PC version and a Mac version, because if we had that, that would be fantastic. I could really see everyone literally only using WhatsApp if they did that. But I think there's complications with the way that they actually do device to device, because you have to register your phone number with them, so it's clearly based on that rather than anything else. So I'm not quite sure of the complexities in that, but it certainly would be nice to have a consolidated messaging platform that was literally completely cross-platform, rather than being restricted to, you know, either just mobile devices or just Windows or just Mac or just Android. We really are running short on that, and at the moment the only real way to do it is use text message. But then again, sending text messages from PCs and Macs is still a little bit awkward. You can do it, but you can't necessarily receive them. So hopefully someone at some stage is going to do something with moving that forward. But moving on, one of the last things I just wanted to bring up about Mountain Lion is the new Safari. Loads and loads of new enhancements in Safari. We've got the consolidated address and search bar now, so you don't have the two completely separate anymore. They're just one consolidated bar. And I've definitely noticed in Mountain Lion, the new version of Safari is incredibly faster than the previous version that's gone before. Now, I know a lot of people use like Chrome, Firefox and all the others, but you and I mean, we both use Safari, and this version of Safari is a huge upgrade on what's gone before. They've also introduced iCloud tabs as well, so if you've got multiple devices, this doesn't come in until iOS 6 on the iOS side, but if you've got multiple Macs running Mountain Lion, and when you've got iOS 6 on your devices as well, you can just click the button and it shows you all of the tabs that you've got open on all of your different devices logged in as the same ID. So that's another fantastic thing, because you can open up a web page on your phone, realize that you need to get like larger screen access to view it, and then instead of emailing it to yourself or sharing it, you can just go bang, read the the iTabs section on Safari, and it will just list all of the tabs open on your iPad or your iPhone, and bang, you go straight to it.
I can think of a few situations where you wouldn't want to leave your tabs open on your phone. I can definitely see that it can be handy, but depending on who's using it.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, if you use your Apple ID in the correct way, i.e. you're the only person using it, then you haven't got a problem. But if you're sharing it with your wife or girlfriend, and maybe you've been looking at a certain car website, for example, that they don't particularly want you looking at, then it could cause you an issue. So you do have to bear that in mind. But great little feature. But more importantly, the speed on Safari is literally lightning fast. When you get to use it, trust me, it'll be one of the first things you noticed. It was literally the first thing I noticed as soon as I opened it, just how much faster it was.
That's one thing that people have a go at me for. They're like, "Oh, Darren, why are you using Safari? It's so slow." Then again, I haven't really used Chrome for ages, and I don't use Firefox, so I don't really notice that it's slow. But I certainly will notice that this version was slow compared to when I do eventually use the new Safari. As far as speed, I'm happy with the speed of the current one, but obviously I'd always accept a faster browser.
Yeah, definitely, and you will undoubtedly notice it. And obviously, for those of us that do like to use Safari, you will continue to be able to do that. And also, obviously, now Safari comes by default tied into the notification center. So if you get notifications within Safari, although I'm not quite sure what kind of notifications you get in Safari, but they are all tied in there. So straight off the bat, you've got that. And I think they needed to do that, because when you look at the functionality of Chrome and the ability to share tabs and all this kind of stuff now in Chrome, Apple definitely needed to take a chunk out of Google's book there in terms of moving forward with Safari. But anyway, that's Mountain Lion. Like we say, that's going to be available for $20 if you're in the US, or I believe around £13 in the UK, or I'm not totally sure on that, sometime towards the end of the month. So definitely advise everybody to go out and check that out if you've got a piece of hardware that's capable of running it. I've had nothing but good results with my upgrades, and this is only the GM release, so definitely a highly recommended there with all those new features. So moving on, I wanted to quickly talk about Apple versus Samsung. Now, this is obviously a topic that we come up against a lot when we're comparing the phones, for example, or the tablets on YouTube. We get a lot of mixed opinions about these things. People tend to be very, very protective over whatever device it is they use. But this is not necessarily a conversation I want to talk about one versus the other. This is about Samsung versus Apple, as in the actual companies versus each other in court. Now, last week, or this week, earlier on this week, or the end of last week, we saw the fact that Apple actually got a $96 million injunction against the Galaxy Nexus in America. And we also saw as well earlier on this week that a UK judge allowed the Galaxy Tab to win against the iPad in terms of the patent dispute in the UK and Wales courts. And the statement that the judge made was quite a funny one, because the judge actually came out and said, well, okay, they are fairly similar, but the Galaxy Tab is clearly not as cool, quote, as the iPad. So, Apple did lose out there in the UK courts, but wow, if you're gonna lose, that's a kind of great sort of bit of marketing to go along with losing a court case. So that was quite interesting. But the big one was this big $96 million injunction against the Galaxy Nexus over in the United States. Basically what happened was Apple themselves went to the US judge that's dealing with all of these kind of patent issues, and they said, look, the Galaxy Nexus is infringed on a whole bunch. I think there was 4 different patents, and I believe they were all software as well. The main one being consolidated search. So the judge said, look, I'm going to give you your injunction, but you've got to pay up $96 million in case when we come back to it, I've decided that you're wrong. So Apple have actually had to pay out $96 million in case the judge decides that she's got it wrong, or he's got it wrong. I think it's a lady, got it wrong at a later date, and then that will actually cover Samsung for any costs they might have lost by not being able to sell the Galaxy Nexus in America. So a huge kind of move there in terms of the sort of whole Samsung versus Apple, and it never seems to be an Apple versus Google. It always seems to be Apple versus Samsung, so I'm not quite sure what the deal is there, but I just wondered what your thoughts were on this kind of ongoing war that Apple are putting upon Samsung over in the US especially.
You're probably wondering why I'm smiling, because at first when it happened I thought it was hilarious. You know, Google said, "Here's Jelly Bean, wow, it's so amazing," and then Apple slapped him around the face and says, "Yes, we've just banned every device that you use," which I thought was funny. I don't like the way that Apple go about competing. No, I like the way that they compete. You know, come on, let's make our product better, not let's ban every other product so the iPhone is the only choice of smartphone. Banning it was the wrong way to go. I do think they are being slightly too picky on the, let's just say, what they're suing them over. I mean, you look at some of these patents and they are absolutely detailed as anything can be detailed. You know, you can just like, the home button alignment, you can sue somebody over. I think they're just really, really picky. I could understand if the device looked exactly the same. I mean, just when the iPhone and the Samsung the first ever Galaxy S was announced, you know, that's when it really started, wasn't it? You know, there was, hey, this looks like the iPhone. I can understand if a device completely mirrors another device, but I do think they are going a little overboard and, oh, you copied me, I'm telling my mum, you know what I mean?
The funny thing is, though, that like with this particular injunction, this was actually against, even though it was actually against the Samsung Galaxy Nexus phone, which is obviously Google's phone, the patents were actually against the software. So they're actually suing Samsung for a piece of software that they don't own. So it's quite a strange one. And literally, most of these patents, though the biggest one was this consolidated search, which actually, I believe, Samsung have pushed out an over-the-air update for the S3 to actually get rid of that consolidated search, so Apple can't touch them on that one. But when you talk about the devices looking similar, I mean, to us, where we spend a whole lot of time reviewing these devices, and you know, I could hold a device up at 100 yards and you can tell me what it is. That's one thing for us. But I don't know if you actually know, but when Apple originally took Samsung to court about the Galaxy Tab, which is still banned in America, they're not allowed to sell Galaxy Tabs in America. When the actual lawyer held up the two devices side by side, they asked the other lawyer which was which, and Samsung's lawyer couldn't tell the difference between the two, which was a huge embarrassment for Samsung. But also goes to show you that, okay, we can tell the difference like in a heartbeat because we're dealing with them day to day. But for the average consumer, that showed, you know, that you would expect the lawyers to have some level of understanding greater than the consumer. So if they couldn't tell them apart, you know, I imagine someone got sacked over that. But still, you know, that does kind of show you the difference in terms of a standard consumer against someone who's kind of in the industry and is spending a lot of time looking at these devices. They do look a lot more similar than you might imagine. That being said, Apple are being absolutely ridiculous. I mean, really the only real legal argument is, can this one device affect the sales of another? That really is what it comes down to. And the fact of the matter is that if you look at the market share between the two, I mean, in terms of tablet devices, I'm not talking about phones at the moment, you know, Android have got a very, very tiny market in terms of tablets. They're not really going to affect it. If the iPhone has got a certain way of searching and so has the Galaxy Nexus, is that going to actually affect sales? No, of course it's not. But I think that personally this goes back to the dispute between Steve Jobs and the guys from Google, whereby when they first started working on the iPhone, Google were heavily involved with it. Steve Jobs said, great, you can have a few built-in applications on the iPhone, we'll work on this together. And the next thing you know, they're bringing out their own phone, which, you know, obviously really peeved off Steve Jobs. And I think that, you know, obviously, you know, he's passed away, unfortunately. But as they move forward in time, I think they're just kind of keeping that going for a little while. And I think we'll eventually see it all kind of fade away. I genuinely believe it comes down to something as petty as that. But I really, it doesn't leave a nice taste in my mouth that that they're behaving like this, because I think companies should be able to sell their own products based upon how good the product is, not because they've got something very, very similar to someone before. And basically the thing that's wrong in this entire situation is the whole patent system. The patent system clearly needs to be completely rewritten, because it's an absolute joke. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on that anyway, just to you know, let you know what's going on with that at the moment. I found it quite interesting as well. So the next thing I wanted to cover off was the Nexus 7 announcement, and also the Jelly Bean announcement, which kind of ties into that at Google I/O. Did you get much coverage in of the Google I/O? Did you watch it on YouTube or anywhere?
I watched the event on YouTube, and I'll have to say, comparing it to Apple's event, because let's be honest, that's where everyone compares it to, it was by far the best and most entertaining event I think I've ever watched. You get these events where they're really just full of specifications. You know, the average person wouldn't be interested in watching this. However, I could pretty much pull in one of my friends that doesn't have an interest about technology, and they would have been made to feel welcome. You know, it was very, very much focused on Google and Android. However, they just made things so much more enjoyable to watch. I mean, they had good presenters, which is something that Samsung didn't have at the Galaxy S3 announcement. You know, people were well spoken. They had entertainment, for example. They had some, I think they were professional BMXers, you know, cycle across the rooftop of the place. They had skydivers jumping out.
That was the Google Glass thing, was it?
Yeah, they were demonstrating the Google Glass. It was really, really enjoyable. I enjoyed it, every single minute of it. The first few minutes I thought, okay, this is where we're going to be bombarded with specifications and it's going to be really boring to watch. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. In fact, I'd probably go back and watch that event again. When they actually announced the Nexus 7 tablet, I was just blown away. But I was always worried that they were going to make the same mistake that HTC made with the HTC Flyer. They make a really good tablet, and when it comes to the price point, they shoot themselves in the foot.
Yeah, I mean, if we look now, I mean, what was the price point of the HTC Flyer? I think it was £600, wasn't it, for the Flyer?
£600.
And in fact, I saw that today, reduced to less than £200 only a few months later. So it shows you what a disaster that was. But I mean, in terms of the Nexus 7, just run us through like some of the basic specs and the price point that Google have set that at.
Right, well, I'm going to leave the price point to last because that's what Google did. It's got a 12-core GPU. It's actually a quad-core tablet. It's Asus built. It comes with NVIDIA's Tegra 3. As I said, it is a quad-core processor. I don't know anything about the megahertz right now. I'm still looking up that. However, the display is a 7-inch display with a resolution of 1280 by 800, so it's slightly over the 720p high definition mark. When they showed us the display and told us about how these tablet would be built for gaming, I was blown away. Graphics on this thing look absolutely incredible.
So 12-core GPU?
Yeah, 12-core GPU. The downside is, like we said earlier, it's only a 7-inch screen. I would have really, really loved to see this thing blown up and put onto a 10-inch display. However, a 7-inch screen, just, you know, we've got to be thankful for what we've got. So when they went through the specifications, you know, 9 hours of HD video playback, 10 hours of web browsing, 10 hours of ebook reading, and 300 hours of standby time. This thing is phenomenal, and it's light, it's portable. So I thought, okay, they've built what seems to be a really good tablet. This is where they're going to put like some 6-digit figure of a price tag on it. They're pricing it at just $199. Now that, for me, is what's going to make or break this device. Hopefully, it's going to make it because it deserves to be a device that people will be buying.
What was the UK price? I think was it. I mean, I did actually go and pre-order one up, so I think it was about £159.
£159 in the UK. So I thought they've also done really well to keep that down, because you know what it's like in the UK, we get taxed a lot more. That could have easily been, you know, £199. However, it's £159 for an 8GB model, and for the 16GB model, it is $250. I would have preferred to pay a little bit extra and get some, I don't know, 3G or 4G cellular data tied in with the carrier on this. However, if you've got like, well, you've got one of them 3 MiFi, you've got data with you all the time. Alternatively, you can tether your phone. Overall, for £159 or $200, a quad-core tablet, it doesn't sound realistic, but it's by Google, it's made by Asus, and I really do have high hopes for this 7-inch tablet. I really would like one myself, probably going to get one in for review, and then maybe in the future.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I think they released that with Ice Cream Sandwich, didn't they? With a new update to Jelly Bean. I think that just rolled out over the last few days, or they made 7. Yeah, or did that come straight out with Jelly Bean?
It's shipping with Jelly Bean, so it's actually shipping with the latest operating system. The operating system that was actually announced the very same day, so it does ship with Jelly Bean, I believe.
But I mean, the ones that they got free at Google I/O, I think, didn't that come with ICS, and then it came with it came bang straight out with Jelly Bean?
Came with a Jelly Bean, sort of like a Gold Master, like Apple do. It comes with a Jelly Bean beta on it. I mean, they've actually said that this is made for Google Play, and I can see why. I mean, Tegra 3 on a tablet of this price, it's phenomenal. I'm really
built by Asus as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was built by Asus. The build quality I can't judge yet, simply because I've not had one in my hand. Overall, from what I've heard, the build quality is very, very solid. I've got real high hopes for it. I mean, I don't know if it's going to give the same experience that Apple managed to give with their iPad.
Well, I mean, talking about the experience, they have obviously invested a whole load of time in trying to smooth out the operating system. That's been one of the major kind of hindrances of Android, and they brought out that, what was it, Project Butter on Jelly Bean, and apparently it is very, very smooth. I mean, I've tried to stay away from the reviews on YouTube until I get my own unit, so I haven't seen much of the actual device itself, but the fact that they've obviously noticed and recognised the fact that their operating system wasn't smooth enough and put all of that sort of development energy into Project Butter, obviously, you know, hopefully that means that we're going to see something decent come out the other side of it. And from what I hear, it is actually a huge improvement over what's gone before. And obviously the other big thing as well that we're going to have in Jelly Bean is Google Now. And I think Google Now really is going to be fantastic. Obviously, I'm mainly an Apple user, but I do use an Android device. In fact, I use 2 Android devices as well. And I think that although the Galaxy S3 went down the route of trying to kind of replicate Siri in S Voice, what Google have done with Google Now is a whole different ballgame. Because essentially, from the way I understand what Google Now is that instead of you putting the input in and getting something out the back of it, i.e., how do you do this, what is this, how do I get here, it basically learns where you live, where you work, predetermines what the traffic will be like when you're going to leave in the morning. If you search for a particular flight online, it will continually notify you about any delays or price changes on that flight, and it's going to be a proactive personal assistant, which is really what a personal assistant should be. You know, if a personal assistant just responded to you asking it questions, then, you know, you probably wouldn't be too pleased with it. Siri's kind of gotten away with it because it's a sort of very sort of faddish, if you like. But I think Google Now is going to be more than a fad. I think it's going to be something that is going to be pushed in your face as and when you need it. And that, obviously, Google know everything about us anyway because of our kind of routines that we have online in terms of searching for certain things. So I think that they're really in a fantastic position to be providing us with proactive information about what we're doing, what we're going to be doing, how we go about doing it, and all of that stuff. And to me, personally, that's the thing that I'm most excited about. I'm not overly sure what I think about a 7-inch form factor because I wasn't that keen on the form factor of the Playbook, which is a fairly similar form factor. I much prefer the iPad for that, but I'm not too sure. We'll have to see how it actually comes when I've actually got it in my hand and see how that turns out. But I think it's going to be fantastic. I think that price point is absolutely insane. I think they've done a fantastic job to create a profitable product for that amount of money. I mean,
do you reckon it's going to compete
with the Fire?
Do you reckon it's going to compete with the iPad?
I don't think it will compete with the iPad in any way whatsoever. I really don't think it's going to affect. They will affect each other. I think it's a brand new market. The one thing I think it's going to have a huge effect on is the Kindle Fire. Obviously in the UK there is no Kindle Fire. I don't think the Kindle Fire is out throughout Europe as well, which I think is a huge mistake from Amazon. And I believe it's done fairly well in America because they just push it so hard. Apparently every other page you go to says Kindle Fire, Kindle Fire. So Amazon have got a great way of marketing their own devices. But I think when the Nexus 7 comes out, I think that's going to interfere quite a lot with the sales of the Kindle Fire. Definitely. I think that's a whole new brand of device. I don't see it competing in any way whatsoever with an iPad. I mean, you've only got to look at the price points, and they're so vastly different. You know, maybe certain people will say, right, I'll go for the cheap device, but I think people who buy iPads are going to buy iPads. People who don't want an iPad and want something cheaper or slightly different, they're obviously going to go for that or the Kindle Fire. And obviously throughout Europe, the Kindle Fire is not even available. So my only worry about the Nexus 7 is because it's obviously completely based around the Play Store. There's a huge limitation on the Play Store, especially in Europe. There's a whole bunch of TV networks and movie production companies that we are just simply not licensed to be able to use through the Play Store in the UK. And I'm not... have you ever done anything to do with music on the Play Store? Because I don't think there is music on the Play Store, is there, in the UK?
I don't think there is, but then again, I don't really own an Android device, so I've not really looked into it. But one thing that I will say, moving back to when you was talking about Google Now,
yeah,
you listen to Siri, it sounds robotic. Listen to S Voice, it sounds robotic. I don't know how Google have done it, but Google Now just sounds exactly like me and you. You know, it's not got that robotic tone to it. I can pretty much take the mick out of Siri's voice, but you can't with Google Now. It sounds like they've actually got a real human voice. I think that would probably persuade me to use it a little bit more, simply because it doesn't feel like I'm talking to a device. It feels like I'll be talking to a friend. What's your opinions on that? Are you glad they've done that? Or
I'm not really fussed about the voice side of things, because I literally just don't use any kind of voice on any kind of like sort of mobile device. For me, the Google Now thing is all about the proactiveness of that being a personal assistant. And you know, you're going to search for a flight, so you're going to get a price, you're going to order it. As the time builds up to it, it's going to let you know about takeoffs, you know, information around the airport, maybe even build in like special offers that are on offer because they know where you're going. They're going to tell you where to be at what time, what the traffic's going to be like on the way to the airport. When you get to the airport, it's going to tell you what terminal it's at, what time your flight is there, and then obviously you'll use it on the plane. As soon as you get off the other side, it's going to say, it's going to know where you're going because you've already pre-booked the hotel through Google. And it's going to say it's going to take you this long to get to a hotel, it's going to cost this much in a cab fare, you know, blah, 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 blah. And it's just going to give you all of this ridiculous amount of proactive information, which is just going to be fantastic. I know you can set your home address, your work address, and all those different things. And I just think that's going to be absolutely epic in terms of that proactive way of looking at it. And I think Apple have really missed a beat in terms of having a proactive personal assistant. Because I literally do not know anyone who uses Siri other than maybe say, set my alarm, create me a reminder. And that's about it. I just don't know anyone that uses it in any other way. Because it's just so much faster to just type it.
One of the specifications that I did seem to miss out on, and I kind of forgot about this one. This thing, for £159, it has NFC technology as well, which means it's pretty much slightly future-proof as well. I mean, this is a new device. It's getting the latest operating system, so it doesn't become part of the, you know, the fragmentation Android devices. It might do in the future as, you know, whatever Kiwi is or whatever they're going to call the next.
Well, the great thing about owning an actual Google device like the Nexus is that when they bring out an operating system, you get it straight away on that Google-based device, same as the Galaxy Nexus. So yeah, that is another plus side of having that device over and above something that's going to run Android on their own hardware. So you know, at Google, clearly kind of taking a little bit of a bite out of Apple's book with the Galaxy Nexus series. So yeah, that's definitely a plus point. But yes, definitely looking forward to the Nexus 7. Obviously, we'll all be getting them in for review fairly soon, so keep an eye out for that on the various YouTube channels. But that kind of moves nicely, and I don't want to talk about this for a huge amount of time, but just get your opinion on all of these rumours around the iPad mini. And what we'll do, we'll just do some quick fire stuff here. So, iPad mini, good idea or bad idea?
Bad idea, they've already made it.
With what?
The iPod Touch.
Yeah, but I mean, they are quite different in terms of the actual form factor. But I mean, do you think we'll ever see an iPad mini?
No, but I do feel we might see a 5-inch iPod Touch.
Yeah, that is
They
possible.
might do an iPod. iPod.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it'd make more sense rather than a new device.
I mean, I think if this is a whole new category of device and Apple aren't going to be in it, then I just can't imagine that happening. So, although obviously Steve Jobs kind of famously said 7 inches, like, no way, not a chance, we're not even considering it, that generally means that they've been working on it for 5 years anyway. So, can't really take Steve Jobs at his word. But, yeah, I just think that even if they've not looked at it up until, the last 6 months, I can just see them seeing this new kind of sector of different form factor devices. And if they could bring out an iPad mini for around, even if they pushed it up to the $250, $300 mark, because they're never going to be able to do it for the $200, that's for sure. Whether that would be a huge success or not. But then I do think that if Apple brought out a 7-inch or a 7.7 inch is really what we're talking about, so it's more of a kind of 8-inch device. But if they did bring out an iPad mini, now that I could definitely see affecting their sales of the much more expensive full-size iPad, and that to me is the main reason why I can't see them bringing out an iPad mini.
Or could they be holding off and seeing how successful the likes of the Amazon Kindle Fire and of course the Nexus 7?
No, they're not that kind of. They're definitely not that kind of company. You've only got to look at all the mistakes that have been made by Palm, by BlackBerry, for example, which we're going to talk about in a minute. When BlackBerry saw the iPhone, they said, no, it's a fad. No one's going to buy it. We'll if it's successful, we'll look at it in the future. Well, that's completely blown BlackBerry out of the water, and the same thing with a whole bunch of different companies. Microsoft on the tablet side of things, Apple are definitely not going to be making that mistake. But I just don't see them bringing out an iPad mini. I really don't. I think to get the true Apple experience, it would basically mean, in the same way that we've got separate apps for the iPad as we do for the iPod and the iPhone, I think that they would have to get people writing apps for the iPad mini. Otherwise they're going to scale it, and then you're going to get this kind of not so great user experience that you get on the Android tablets, whereby most of the apps are just scaled Android phone apps, which is obviously not good. So loads of reasons why I just can't see Apple bringing out the mini.
It could also open up Apple to, joining the fragmentation camp, because, not every developer is going to, make their application work for this smaller iPad. So you might even get a small sense of fragmentation if they was to bring out this iPad mini or whatever they would call it. I personally think we've got more chance of seeing an Apple television, an actual television set, than we do of seeing an iPad mini. I think they'll stick with the iPod Touch and maybe big up the screen to 5 inches.
Yeah, I mean, well, we'll come back to the Apple TV, but I definitely don't think they're going to make one of them either. But we'll come back to that at a later date. That's a whole big conversation. But as we said, they're just talking about the BlackBerry as a company. Kind of wanted to just finish off on that. Now, I'm actually a fairly decent fan of BlackBerry in terms of the fact that I've worked in enterprise IT, and I've seen BlackBerry be able to fulfill the needs of those kinds of people in terms of security and connectivity and also communications for the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years so incredibly well. But obviously, since the invention of the iPhone, BlackBerry have literally just been, going further and further downhill. And recently we've just seen that BB10 is going to be delayed until 2013. And when obviously we saw all of those kind of videos come out that was supposedly leaked from BlackBerry about BB10, they really did look like they might be creating something that could at least begin to compete with Android and Apple. But now they've delayed that till 2013. I mean, I just think that's a disaster for them. And off the back of that as well, they've killed off, or they're potentially going to be laying off up to 5,000 workers, which is actually about 35% of their entire workforce.
It's crazy, isn't it? I mean, we're already in a recession, so, BlackBerry and RIM aren't the only company that are going to be laying off. But as far as that BlackBerry 10, I agree with you. When I first saw them, I thought, is that their new notification system? Is that how I would be sending a message? And I liked it because I hadn't seen it done before. There was sort of a uniqueness within BlackBerry 10 that I haven't seen with an iOS or Android. And it did seem to be, maybe a fresh era of BlackBerry. So, they did kind of get my hopes up. I thought, are BlackBerry going to be sneaking back into the smartphone industry? And then they said, yeah, you can have all this, but you're going to have to wait another year for it to come. And then, you know, like everybody I've pretty much given up on BlackBerry. I can't see them recovering. They've got a lot to recover from. As you said, it really did start going downhill when the iPhone really came out and sort of changed the way the smartphones were made and how we use our smartphone today.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always going to be a space for BlackBerry in the enterprise. I mean, it's not something that you're overly familiar with, obviously, the enterprise space, but that in order to actually deploy vast amounts of mobile devices, make them secure and have like efficient communications, there really is only one way to do that at the moment, and that is still with BlackBerry. There's obviously people coming in now with iPhones saying they want email on their iPhones, but the vast majority of corporate enterprise won't even entertain having their corporate email on an uncontrolled device. So BlackBerry have still got that kind of enterprise sector, but even die-hard BlackBerry fans that I know, mostly girls who use BBM, are slowly sort of dripping over to be using iPhones or even Android devices. So the fact that BlackBerry have delayed that until 2013, the amount of people that have got contracts coming up within that time, the fact that the iPhone 5 is going to sit right in between now and then, I think is an absolute disaster for BlackBerry and their executives coming out saying there's nothing to worry about. When you looked at their last financial figures and the fact they're laying off 35% of their workforce plus selling 2 of their private jets, true story, I think is bad times all over for BlackBerry. But anyway, so as not to end on a sour note, this was obviously our first weekly podcast. We're going to be back doing this every single week, hopefully from now on. I really do hope you guys enjoyed it. Please do subscribe to this podcast. We're going to try and do them as regularly as possible. We haven't actually decided on a fixed date, but as and when we do, a fixed day in the week, we will be releasing it every single week on that particular day. But over the first few weeks, you may see it come out sort of 1 to 2 days either side of the day that we're doing it at the moment. So looking forward to that. Thank you very much for listening. Big thank you to Darren as well from Your Gadget Guide. Definitely check those guys out at yourgadgetguide.net. Yep. Check them guys out there. And obviously I will see you all in the next podcast. So thank you very much, guys. Have a great week.